When I was a little boy in Richmond, Virginia, I remember my grandmother had next to her sewing machine a big box of sewing scraps, and from those she would make incredible, what she called crazy quilts, to keep you warm on a cold winter's night, she would say. Well, today we're going to meet Linda Hannawalt of the San Francisco Sewing and Quilting Collaborative, and she talks about quilts that actually warm your heart. Linda, welcome.
Yes, thank you very much for having us here
You're very
today.
welcome. So tell me about your work and how you created these gorgeous quilts.
Well, at the San Francisco Sewing and Quilting Collaborative, we make fabric hugs.
You make fabric hugs.
Yes, we do.
That's a nice tagline.
And we have all free classes and state-of-the-art equipment and affordable fabric in our thrift shop, so we can provide these to San Francisco.
Mm-hmm. Now, what gave you the idea to get involved? You've been doing this for a year and a half, correct?
Well, 6 years ago, I started teaching quilting in the Tenderloin at Madonna Residence to senior women. And we had a really good time, and a gentleman came up to me and said, was helping me around the house from a halfway house here in San Francisco. And he said he wanted to make a quilt for his mother. And I said, well, you can't come to the residence. And so the next thing I know, I said, and you'd have to know how to sew. Turns out he was a tailor in San Quentin, made guard uniforms, and really wanted to do something for his mother to say thank you. So I set up a program at their residence. Next thing I know, I have men working with me, and 2 years later I set up a program at Homeless Prenatal. And what I discovered after 4 years of going 6 days a week and quilting all the quilts and hundreds of quilts, that I couldn't do very much more all by myself. So I decided to set up a nonprofit, San Francisco Sewing and Quilting Collaborative, so we could have more volunteers, have a specific place where people could come, and provide everything free for them, so that all they need to do is bring their time and talent.
Right. So now, what is it that brings together mothers who are in the prenatal stage, and guards from San Quentin, and seniors in the Tenderloin, and people of various languages? What brings them together in this quilt?
They want to give something to someone they love and say thank you.
Mm-hmm. And what is it about quilting? I mean, I started talking about my grandmother, who was a seamstress, and she always said her quilts were made with love. And I asked her once, where did she get her designs? And she said, I don't know until I start making them.
I call that organic quilting. I'm an organic quilter. I start, and then I kind of decide what size I'm going to make. If it's a baby quilt, it's this big. If it's an adult quilt, then it gets a little more, and then it gets a little more, and it might get a border until it gets to the size I want it. Right. That's organic quilting. And people who receive the quilts, we call them fabric hugs because they just wrap them around themselves, and long after you've walked out the door, the quilt is still there with them.
Right.
They love it.
I mean, now quilting has become, well, it's a form of folk art in the United States. I mean, how can you delineate between which of these is going to be a quilt you're going to throw on your bed and something that's going to be preserved in a folk art museum? And when does it make that jump?
Oh, wow. Depends on in the eye of the beholder. Some of them are made for different reasons, to be art quilts, and then they hang on the wall. And then some are on your lap quilts, and some are on the bed. They have different functions.
Right. Well, certainly here in San Francisco, we're familiar with a quilt that had a lot of different functions, the Names Project AIDS Memorial Quilt, which was much more than just a hug in fabric. It was several tens of thousands of grave-sized hugs in memory of people who had died from AIDS, HIV. What is the relationship between the San Francisco Sewing and Quilting Collaborative and the quote-unquote AIDS quilt?
Well, I remember the first day I saw the Names Project. It was in Oakland, and I can tell you exactly what I had on that day. It's such a strong memory for me, and it was before I was a quilter. And after I became a quilter, it was memories like that that reminded me of why I wanted to make something. People make bereavement quilts with the clothing of the people. I have a friend who just quilted her quilt at our shop, and it was made out of the gentleman's aloha shirts for the wife, and she will always have that for her. They're a gift. They're a gift from your imagination, from your creativity, from your heart, and they're practical. They're a practical gift in that they keep you warm, and they're a thing of beauty, brings a joy, a smile.
Now, you told an interesting story before we were filming about there was one quilting class you were giving it to a group of men, and they came in and they changed the program, you said on me.
Actually, here's what happened. We were signed up. All these women came and wanted to learn how to make a reversible jacket. So we set up a class. But who signed up happened to be gentlemen. And so the day of the class, all men showed up. So we changed it to a reversible vest.
Right.
So we're very adaptable.
Right. So you mean the diversity of quilters runs the gamut. You have gay men, you have women, you have older people, young people. I mean, what is it that really you find is the same about everyone who quilts?
They're so proud of what they make. They're so proud. This week, Tuesday, we had children, 2 counselors brought children from the Hamilton House, from the Tenderloin.
Which is a nonprofit for homeless youth, correct?
It's for the whole family.
For the whole family.
Helping them redirect into permanent housing. And so they're in transition. So they came and picked out their own fabric. See, we try to give choice. They get to pick out their own fabric free. And each of the children between 8 and 10 made their own pillowcases and took them home. They were just, and they just held them like this.
What does that do to you to see a young person who maybe doesn't have a concept of home or house like you and I may, and they suddenly make something for their home? What does that do to them?
I'm just saying, I watch faces light up. I see it every day. They're so proud. People who think they can't do that, they can't do that. And then we sit them down and say, just start. Just start. We'll help you. And quilting is a community. The people, last week we had 2 women from a church in San Jose who want to take this back to San Jose. And there was a gal who was there and heard that they needed to make 10 quilts, so she stayed. She wasn't going to stay. She said, well, I better help them. So then another gal came in and, what are you doing? Oh, we're making 10 quilts for this church down in San Jose. Oh, okay. Well, then she just pulled up a chair and she started helping.
So you literally are stitching together communities.
It develops community, and people love to work together, whether they're doing something for themselves, their family, or someone else. It's just a shared, it's a shared craft, a shared art.
In our last few moments, talk to me about why a nonprofit? I mean, the recession has been brutal. It's still going on. San Francisco and the Bay Area have a lot of nonprofits already. What made you think of doing the very easy thing of starting a nonprofit? How do you fund this?
I've started funding it by myself, and my husband and I set this up, and then we realized we needed to expand. So we've been receiving grants this year. We have a matching grant right now, and that's why we have a thrift shop where all the donations, and we sell that to fund our program so we can provide more. We provide, last year, almost 800 quilts to our community, and the other thing we do is pillowcases for children with cancer and for AIDS patients, and for people throughout the Correct House, which is life-threatening diseases, children. They ask for 100 pillowcases a month.
And are you able to meet the demand?
We're working on it.
So if someone wants to come to you and say, I want to make a quilt for myself, but maybe I'd like to use my talent and make a quilt or a pillowcase for some of the young people at Correct House?
That's exactly why we do the free classes.
Great. And where can they go online to get more information?
At www.sfsqc.org.
Well, thank you for bringing your hugs and fabric onto the show. We appreciate it. We've been speaking with Linda Hannawalt about the San Francisco Quilting and Sewing Collaborative. Next, we're going to speak with Eric Jansen, a well-known voice on the Bay Area airwaves, host of Out on the Bay. We'll be right back.